Have you ever faced a really tough decision? You know, the kind that keeps you staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning?
Oh, absolutely.
And you just wish you had the legendary wisdom of Solomon. I mean, we throw that phrase around all the time, right?
We really do. We usually treat Solomon as, well, the ultimate historical role model for intellect, the guy who just had it all figured out.
Exactly. But today, we are completely flipping the script.
Yeah, because it turns out the smartest man in the room might actually serve as history's greatest cautionary tale.
Seriously. So our source material today is this fascinating and honestly hard-hitting sermon transcript titled Faith in the Stories of Three Kings, Worship of Obedience.
And it focuses deeply on the text of 1 Kings chapter 11.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to extract the surprising, cautionary nuggets from this narrative to completely reevaluate what wisdom and faith actually mean.
Because we're going to see just how easily the smartest people can absolutely fool themselves.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the contrast between the Solomon we think we know, you know, the impossibly wise king, and the deeply flawed, deeply compromised man described in this text is just completely jarring.
It really is. I mean, examining this narrative challenges our basic, everyday definition of faith.
How so?
Well, in modern culture, we often treat faith as a passive intellectual belief. It's treated like acknowledging a certain set of facts is true.
Like checking a box on a spiritual census or something.
Exactly. But the ideas we are unpacking today push really hard against that. It moves the definition of faith from passive agreement to a relentless, active daily obedience.
It forces you to look at your own life and ask if you are just, stockpiling theological knowledge or if you're actually living it.
Right.
And to see how that failure plays out, we don't even have to start by analyzing Solomon's mind or his writings. We can literally just look at his real estate.
Yeah, his internal priorities manifested in actual stone and mortar.
Right. The guy was a legendary builder, most famous for constructing the awe-inspiring Temple of God in Jerusalem.
But the timeline and the sheer scale of his building projects, they tell a very different story than you might expect from a purely devoted servant.
Okay, what's fascinating here is how architecture reveals theology, right?
Absolutely. Solomon spent 7 years building the Temple of God. And, 7 years is a massive undertaking.
A huge investment of national resources.
Right. But then he spent 13 years building his own personal palace.
Wait, almost twice the time.
Yes. And the resources used, the sheer footprint of it, his palace was roughly 4 times the size of the temple.
4 times. Wow.
Yeah. It reveals what a person truly worships, where they believe the center of the universe actually is. And it wasn't just that his house was bigger or took longer to build.
It's a geography, isn't it?
Exactly. The most shocking detail is the geography. He built his own massive palace, physically connected to God's temple.
So they shared the exact same space.
Yes. By physically connecting his sprawling royal house to God's holy house, he was essentially equating himself with the divine.
Putting himself right on the same level.
Right. And it gets even more blatantly compromised. He also built a connected palace for his most prominent foreign wife, the daughter of the Pharaoh of Egypt.
Which is wild when you think about the bedrock history of the Israelites being enslaved in Egypt.
It is. And because she still practiced her own religion, he effectively allowed a center of idolatry to be established right next door to the Holy Temple of God.
You're kidding? So it's like a modern CEO building a very nice, modest little monument to the original founders of the company out in the courtyard.
Right.
But then using company funds to build an absolutely massive, lavish mansion for themselves on the exact same property using the same front door.
That is the perfect analogy. It completely changes the meaning of the monument. The founder's statue isn't a tribute anymore.
It's just an accessory to the CEO's ego. Did Solomon actually confine God to a beautiful box while acting as his own God outside of it?
That's exactly what it looks like. He built a beautiful box for God so he could rule the rest of the kingdom however he pleased with no actual moral boundaries.
And the human cost of this ego trip was immense. I mean, this wasn't just a quick weekend renovation. This led to a grueling 20-year construction nightmare for the entire nation.
Because someone has to actually cut those stones and haul that timber, Solomon drafted a massive labor force.
Right, placing a heavy yoke on his people.
Yeah, we know this because after Solomon died, the people went to his son and literally begged him to lighten the hard labor his father had put on them.
Just to build a monument to one man's ego while he claims it's all for divine glory.
And if building a palace for Pharaoh's daughter was a subtle compromise, what happened next was a complete surrender.
Yeah, because Solomon didn't stop with one foreign marriage. This is where the story gets famous and honestly logistically absurd.
Right. God had explicitly warned the Israelites not to marry foreign women.
And the reason wasn't about nationality or xenophobia, it was entirely spiritual. The warning was clear: they will turn your hearts to other gods.
It was a direct, unambiguous command to protect their spiritual integrity.
But Solomon, the man gifted with unprecedented wisdom, completely obliterated that rule. He married 700 wives, who were princesses, and took 300 concubines.
Women from Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, the Hittites, 1,000 women.
The math here is absurdly dark. The sermon notes that if he visited one wife a day, it would take him about 3 years to see them all.
It's just staggering.
Its sheer excess is hard to wrap your head around. It sounds like the punchline to a joke about royal decadence.
But the tragic outcome is exactly what was prophesied. In his old age, these women led him to build high places, essentially outdoor shrines, and massive altars for idols.
And we aren't talking about harmless little garden statues of minor deities here.
And no, we are talking about Shemash, the abomination of Moab, Molech, the abomination of the Ammonites, a deity deeply associated with horrific child sacrifice.
Oh, wow.
And Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians. Solomon, the builder of God's temple, was now funding and facilitating the worship of these idols.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I struggle with this. I really do.
Yeah, how so?
If someone is genuinely that wise, if God literally granted them unprecedented supernatural wisdom, how is it mechanically possible for them to be this foolish?
It's a great question.
I mean, he knew the rules. He literally wrote proverbs about wisdom.
Yeah.
Is the text implying his wisdom was a sham?
Well, it wasn't a sham, but it highlights a terrifying human capacity for cognitive dissonance.
Okay.
There is a massive structural difference between possessing intellectual knowledge and living out an active faith.
Ah, right. We often confuse intellectual knowledge with living faith. Like, you can have the absolute perfect blueprint for a house.
Exactly.
You can memorize the blueprint. You can give brilliant university lectures on the blueprint. But if you never actually pick up a hammer and build it, the blueprint doesn't give you shelter.
It's totally useless when the rain starts. As James chapter 2, verse 17 says, faith without works is dead.
Solomon had the ultimate blueprint, but his faith was dead because his actions contradicted his knowledge.
To really understand how a genius fails so spectacularly, we need to look at a specific Hebrew concept. It's the word shamar, often translated as keeping the truth.
Like keeping God's commands.
Right. In English, when we say we keep something, it sounds very passive, like keeping a book on a shelf.
Or keeping an old receipt in a drawer. It just sits there.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the Hebrew concept of shamar carries a sense of standing guard with intense vigilance. Think of a sentry standing on a watchtower in the middle of the night.
Staring into the dark, knowing an attack could come at any moment. Wait, really? So it's not a safe deposit box, it's a military post?
Yes. You have to actively defend it. It means aggressively protecting the truth, guarding it against the constant siege of everyday temptations.
So faith isn't just accepting that a truth exists.
No. Solomon knew the truth better than anyone, but he abandoned his post on the watchtower. He let the enemy march right through the front gates because he was too distracted by his own wealth and power.
He abandoned the watchtower to go hang out in the 4 times larger palace he built for himself. Which brings us to how this ancient royal hypocrisy directly mirrors a trap that you and I fall into every single week.
It's very relatable, unfortunately.
We have 168 hours in a week. The sermon's central gut punch is that true worship isn't just the 1 hour spent sitting in a church building on a Sunday.
Because if you do that, you are living the other 167 hours entirely by the world's logic.
Right. The pursuit of money, the accumulation of power, ruthless competition.
The preacher has a specific warning here. Don't treat a Sunday service as a rehabilitation center.
Ooh, that phrase is a gut punch. A rehabilitation center.
To make up for a week of failing to live out your faith.
It's like people get beat up by the world's logic for 6 days, ruthlessly climb the corporate ladder, step on whoever they need to, and then come in for an hour on Sunday to feel better.
Exactly. They get patched up emotionally and then go right back out on Monday morning to live exactly the same way.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, how does the source address this?
Well, looking at what Jesus did regarding this exact dynamic is incredibly revealing. In John chapter 2, Jesus says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up."
Talking about his own body.
Right. He was effectively tearing down the entire physical temple paradigm. For centuries, the mindset was you go to the temple to experience God. Jesus came to basically free God from the temple.
Which is huge, because the idea that God only lives in that one specific golden box is so comforting, because it means we are in charge everywhere else.
And that's exactly why Jesus dismantles it. He did this so that his kingdom could spread into absolutely every area of life, like leaven spreading through dough.
So access to the divine is no longer restricted to a building.
Right. But that also means your faith requires active, daily participation in the mundane parts of your life.
So what does this all mean for us? Let me bring this down to earth with an analogy, because compartmentalizing our lives is something we all do naturally.
Oh, for sure.
Treating faith like a 1-hour Sunday requirement is exactly like going to the gym for exactly 1 hour a week.
Okay, I like where this is going.
You go, you put on the expensive athletic gear, you take a great mirror selfie to prove to everyone you were there. But then, for the next 167 hours, you eat absolutely nothing but deep-fried fast food and sit completely motionless on the couch.
And then you wonder, why aren't I getting healthier? The gym must be broken.
Exactly. True faith is the diet outside the gym.
It's determined by how you act in those 167 hours. Are you bringing the rule of Jesus into your high-stakes business meetings, or just acting out of greed?
It's about bringing every mundane moment, doing laundry, dealing with a difficult client under the authority of the faith you claim to hold.
If you cry during an emotional hour of worship on Sunday, but then ruthlessly undercut your coworkers on Monday morning, your faith is a ghost.
It's the Solomon trap. You've built a beautiful temple, but you're worshiping yourself in the massive palace next door.
Yeah. So after a lifetime of doing exactly that, chasing excess, ignoring the watchtower, Solomon actually had a profound, if bitter, awakening at the end of his life.
He didn't die entirely blind to his mistakes.
No. Two famous conclusions highlight this awakening. The first is found in Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
And the second is his famous lament in Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity.
Right.
But that word vanity always trips people up. It sounds like he's just saying life is totally meaningless, like he turned into some ancient, depressed nihilist.
It does sound like that in English. But when you look at the original Hebrew word there, it's hevel.
Hevel, okay.
And a much more accurate, visceral translation of hevel is vapor or steam, like from a boiling kettle.
Oh, wow. Imagine trying to catch steam with your bare hands. You can see it. It looks substantial for a second. But the moment you aggressively close your fist around it, there is nothing there.
It slips right through your fingers,
Yeah.
and your hand is empty. That is the perfect metaphor for the human pursuit of fulfillment outside of God,
So if you grasp for joy, trying to capture it forever, you just catch temporary pleasure.
which fades the moment you experience it.
Yeah.
And if you grasp for peace, trying to control your environment perfectly, you don't catch peace, you catch obsession. You become a paranoid control freak.
Solomon had more wealth, more power, more intellectual knowledge than anyone in history. He tried to grasp all of it, and at the end, he opened his hands and realized he was holding nothing but hevel, just vapor.
Which led him to his final conclusion: fear God and keep his commandments. There's that word again, fear.
Can you clarify that word fear? Because the text makes a massive point about the modern culture of easy faith. When modern audiences hear fear God, we recoil.
Right? We think of being terrified of an abusive, unpredictable figure waiting to smite us.
But that's a complete misunderstanding, right?
Totally. The fear of the Lord isn't about cowering in terror. It's about recognizing the sheer awe-inspiring magnitude of the Creator.
Okay.
The sermon brings up a specific Korean term to describe this reverence, which means a trembling, vigilant reverence.
Oh, I see. Think about the feeling of standing right at the edge of the Grand Canyon with no guardrails, looking a mile down into the earth.
That's a great image.
It's not that the canyon is angry at you. The canyon isn't a monster trying to eat you, but its sheer, staggering scale forces you to realize how fragile and small you are.
It commands an immediate physical respect. Your knees go a little weak.
Yeah, it's the difference between respecting a house cat and respecting a lion. If you don't have a healthy, trembling respect for the absolute power of that canyon, you're going to act foolishly and you're going to fall.
That trembling reverence, that awe-induced humility, is exactly what is missing from so much of modern religion.
The easy faith culture.
Yes, a therapeutic model designed to validate your success and to make you feel like your spiritual life is just another accessory to your personal achievement.
Which is the exact trap Solomon fell into. He used his God-given wisdom as a tool to elevate himself. He used his faith as an accessory to his royal brand.
When a culture makes you feel entirely comfortable in your worldly ambitions, it removes the need for genuine repentance. It removes the need for that trembling reverence at the edge of the canyon.
Because why would you change your deeply ingrained habits if the gym mirror selfie gets enough likes? It's a comfortable illusion.
But it's an illusion that ultimately leaves you staring at your empty hands, grasping at vapor. Having a knowledge of the truth does not save you if you refuse to submit your daily life to it.
The story of Solomon isn't just ancient history, it's a mirror. True faith isn't about how much knowledge you accumulate or how grand your 1 hour of worship looks.
It's about active daily obedience, letting go of the vapor, admitting when you've been chasing your own ego, and stepping into the active obedience of the 167 hours.
Absolutely.
This raises an important question, though.
It really does, because the X-ray on our own lives is rarely as clean as we want it to be. So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought, something to seriously chew on as you go about those 167 hours this week. If keeping the truth means being a vigilant sentry on a watchtower, what specific foreign idol, perhaps a modern ambition, a digital habit, or a hidden mindset of ruthless competition are you unknowingly building a lavish palace for right next door to your own internal temple? Take a hard look at your own architecture. Keep living deep, and we'll see you next time.